The cacophony of jazz and chatter filled the air as Baptiste Gaudet meandered through the bustling French Quarter flea market. The oppressive New Orleans heat clung to his skin, mingling with the scents of spices, incense, and the faint undercurrent of decay that seemed ever present in the city. Baptiste, a struggling writer with a penchant for the occult, had come in search of inspiration for his next novel. Little did he know, inspiration was about to find him in the most unexpected and terrifying way possible. As he navigated the labyrinth of stalls, a small booth tucked away in a shadowy corner caught his eye. The vendor, an elderly woman with eyes like smouldering coals, beckoned to him with a gnarled finger. Her table was laden with an assortment of curious items: voodoo dolls, gree-gree bags, and ancient-looking artifacts. But it was a small, unassuming locket that drew Baptiste's attention. The tarnished silver piece seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, and he found himself reaching for it before he could even process the action. "Ah, you have a discerning eye, mon cher," the old woman crooned, her voice like gravel wrapped in velvet. "That locket, it has quite a history. It belonged to a powerful mambo, you see. They say her spirit still lingers within, waiting for the right soul to set her free." Baptiste's fingers closed around the cool metal, and a jolt of electricity seemed to course through his body. He knew he should walk away, but the allure of the artifact was too strong to resist. As Baptiste haggled with the vendor, he failed to notice the knowing glint in her eye, or the way her smile never quite reached those burning orbs. With the locket safely tucked into his pocket, he made his way back through the market, unaware of the eyes that followed his every move. Among the crowd, Amelia Thibodeaux, a local historian with a secret interest in the arcane, watched the transaction with growing concern. She had heard whispers about cursed objects circulating in the market, and something about the exchange set her nerves on edge. That night, as Baptiste sat at his desk, the locket lay open before him. His fingers traced the intricate engravings on its surface, and he found himself lost in thought about its previous owner. As the clock struck midnight, a strange mist began to seep from the locket's center. Baptiste's eyes widened in a mixture of fascination and terror as the mist coalesced into a shadowy figure. In that moment, he realized that his search for inspiration had led him down a path from which there might be no return. In the days that followed, Baptiste found himself consumed by an inexplicable obsession with the locket. His fingers constantly reached for it, tracing its contours as if seeking answers from its cold, metallic surface. Sleep eluded him, replaced by feverish writing sessions that stretched into the early hours of the morning. The words flowed like never before, dark and intoxicating tales of voodoo and ancient spirits that seemed to come from somewhere beyond his own imagination. As his manuscript grew, so did the shadows under his eyes and the pallor of his skin. Across town, Amelia Thibodeaux couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that had taken root since witnessing Baptiste's purchase. Her research into local folklore had led her down a rabbit hole of whispered legends and dire warnings about cursed artifacts. Determined to uncover the truth, she began to frequent the flea market, seeking out the enigmatic vendor. But the old woman's booth remained eerily vacant, as if it had never existed at all. Amelia's inquiries were met with nervous glances and tight-lipped silence from the other vendors, their fear palpable in the humid air. As Baptiste's behavior grew increasingly erratic, his friend Remy Broussard decided to intervene. Remy, a jazz musician with deep roots in the city's spiritual underbelly, recognized the signs of something sinister at work. He arrived at Baptiste's apartment one sweltering afternoon, only to find the place in disarray. Books on voodoo and spirit possession lay scattered across the floor, and the walls were covered in frenzied scribbles and arcane symbols. In the center of the chaos sat Baptiste, his eyes wild and unfocused, muttering incantations under his breath. Remy's attempts to reason with his friend fell on deaf ears. As he reached out to shake Baptiste from his trance, his hand brushed against the locket hanging from Baptiste's neck. A jolt of energy surged through Remy, and in that instant he saw a vision of a powerful mambo, her face contorted in anguish as she was trapped within the locket's confines. He recoiled, understanding at last the true nature of the artifact and the danger it posed. But before he could act, Baptiste's hand shot out, gripping Remy's wrist with inhuman strength. "She's chosen me," Baptiste hissed, his voice a blend of his own and something ancient and feminine. "I will be her vessel, and together we will reshape this world." As Remy struggled to free himself, Amelia's research finally bore fruit. Hidden in the dusty archives of a forgotten library, she discovered the tragic tale of Marie Laveau's apprentice, a gifted mambo whose ambition led her to dabble in forbidden magics. The locket, it seemed, was both her greatest creation and her eternal prison, trapping her soul in an endless cycle of possession and rebirth. Armed with this knowledge, Amelia raced against time to find Baptiste, knowing that with each passing moment, the boundary between the living and the dead grew ever more blurred. The French Quarter pulsed with an otherworldly energy as a storm brewed on the horizon. Baptiste, now more vessel than man, made his way through the twisting streets, the locket glowing with an unholy light against his chest. The mambo's spirit had almost fully merged with his own, her centuries of knowledge and power coursing through his veins. Citizens shrank back as he passed, instinctively sensing the wrongness that emanated from him. Amelia and Remy raced through the rain-slicked cobblestones, desperately trying to catch up to Baptiste before it was too late. Amelia clutched a worn grimoire to her chest, its pages containing the ritual that might free both Baptiste and the trapped mambo. Remy, still shaken from his encounter, carried a bag of protective gris-gris and sacred herbs. Their paths converged in Jackson Square, where Baptiste stood before the statue of Andrew Jackson, arms raised to the thundering sky. The locket floated before him, spinning rapidly and emanating tendrils of dark energy. As lightning split the sky, Baptiste began to chant in a language long forgotten by the living. The ground trembled, and the barriers between worlds began to fray. Amelia pushed through the paralyzed onlookers, Remy close behind. She began her own incantation, her voice rising to challenge Baptiste's. The two rituals clashed in the air, creating a maelstrom of magical energy. The locket shuddered violently, caught between two powerful forces. Baptiste turned to face them, his eyes now completely black, his voice a horrifying blend of his own and the mambo's. "You cannot stop what has already begun," he growled. As the battle of wills reached its peak, the locket suddenly exploded with blinding light. Time seemed to stand still as the mambo's spirit was forcibly expelled from Baptiste's body. For a moment, her form was visible to all, a regal woman in antebellum dress, her face a mask of rage and desperation. But as Amelia spoke the final words of her spell, something went terribly wrong. Instead of freeing Baptiste, the ritual created a vortex of energy. To Amelia and Remy's horror, Baptiste's body began to dissolve, drawn inexorably toward the locket. His scream of terror was cut short as he vanished, sucked into the small silver artifact that clattered to the ground. As the blinding light faded from Jackson Square, an eerie silence descended upon the gathered crowd. Where Baptiste had stood moments before, only the locket remained, innocuous on the rain-soaked cobblestones. Amelia, her voice raw from the powerful incantation, stumbled forward, her legs barely supporting her. Remy followed, his face a mask of disbelief and horror. The air still crackled with residual energy, and the faint outlines of spirits lingered at the edges of vision before slowly fading away. In the aftermath of the supernatural confrontation, the French Quarter became a hive of activity. Police sirens wailed in the distance, mixing with the murmurs of shocked onlookers trying to make sense of what they had witnessed. Amelia carefully picked up the locket, feeling its weight, now far heavier with the knowledge of what it contained. She and Remy quickly left the scene, knowing they needed to find a way to free their friend. Days turned into weeks as Amelia and Remy worked tirelessly to unravel the locket's mysteries. They consulted voodoo practitioners, Catholic priests, and even quantum physicists, each offering a piece of the puzzle. Amelia's apartment became a hub of arcane research, its walls covered in symbols and equations. Remy spent hours playing his trumpet near the locket, hoping the familiar sounds would reach Baptiste somehow. As word of the incident spread through whispered conversations and hushed online forums, New Orleans found itself at the center of a supernatural storm. Tourists and thrill-seekers flocked to the city, hoping to catch a glimpse of the otherworldly. Amelia and Remy worked in secret, all too aware of the danger if the locket fell into the wrong hands. 1 month after the event, as a full moon hung low over the Mississippi, Amelia and Remy made a breakthrough. Using a combination of ancient rituals and modern technology, they managed to establish a tenuous connection with Baptiste. His voice, weak and distorted, came through the locket. "I'm here, but I'm not alone. The Mambo. We're both trapped. Please, help us." The message cut off abruptly, leaving Amelia and Remy with the chilling realization that their ordeal was far from over. They now faced the daunting task of not just freeing their friend, but also dealing with the powerful spirit trapped alongside him. As autumn leaves began to fall in the French Quarter, Amelia and Remy stood before Marie Laveau's tomb in St. Louis Cemetery No. 1. The air was thick with the scent of burning sage and the quiet murmur of ancient prayers. On a small altar rested the locket, now bound by powerful wards and sigils. They had spent months preparing for this moment, gathering knowledge from the darkest corners of occult lore and the brightest minds of modern science. Under the watchful eyes of a select group of voodoo practitioners and spiritual leaders, Amelia began the ritual they had crafted. Her voice, steady and clear, wove together threads of various magical traditions. Remy added his own contribution, playing a haunting melody on his trumpet that seemed to make the very air vibrate with power. As the incantation reached its peak, the locket began to glow, pulsing with an otherworldly light. Suddenly, 2 spectral forms materialized. Baptiste and the Mambo, their ethereal bodies intertwined in a struggle for dominance. "You must choose," Amelia called out, her voice strained with effort. "One may pass beyond the veil, but one must remain as guardian of the locket." Baptiste and the Mambo locked eyes, centuries of knowledge and a lifetime of modern experiences clashing in silent communication. After what seemed like an eternity, Baptiste's spirit turned to his friends. "I'll stay," he said, his voice echoing with a newfound power and resignation. "I understand her pain now. I can bear this burden." The Mambo's form softened, a look of gratitude and relief washing over her features. With a final surge of energy, the ritual concluded. The Mambo's spirit dissolved into motes of light, finally finding peace after centuries of torment. Baptiste's form was drawn back into the locket, which now shimmered with a soft, benevolent glow. Amelia and Remy stood in silence, tears streaming down their faces, victorious yet heartbroken. In the days that followed, they ensured the locket was secured in a secret location, protected by both magical and mundane means. Though Baptiste was lost to the physical world, his presence could still be felt. Those who passed by the hidden locket often spoke of feeling a comforting presence, of hearing whispered words of wisdom, or of being inspired to create works of art and literature. And on quiet nights, in the jazz clubs of New Orleans, patrons sometimes swore they could hear an extra trumpet playing along, its melody intertwining with the living musicians, a haunting reminder of the thin veil between worlds and the sacrifices made to maintain that delicate balance.